regarding Vader. I'm sure you've both had dealings with him. I had one of his last interviews. I heard you, Casey, say in a recent interview that you were there for the infamous fight. Is it true that Ming ultimately stopped the fight like Vader said, and it probably would have continued on? Maybe Vader would have got the upper hand, or was it pretty much over by the time Ming got there? And just also Kevin's recollections of Vader too.
I'll go first. I loved him. I thought he was a nice guy. His
Oh
gloves
my
were
God,
very smelly.
Kevin.
No, I
Kevin,
thought he was.
Kev.
He was a nice guy
Yes,
with
because you
me.
didn't have to wrestle with him in the
I
ring.
didn't have to, but his gloves were smelly, and I will admit that. And he had lifts in his boots. He had multiple lifts in his boots. It was like this because he was trying to look tall. I don't think it affected anything. But now, Casey, you can continue.
I'll put it this way. 2 weeks prior to that, we were wrestling. It was MGM Studios, and the word was going around Hogan's wrestling in the Enhancement Talent. And so the buzz was going around everywhere. So I was like, okay. Well, me thinking, I'm like, okay, Pee Wee Anderson was Hogan's personal referee in all of his matches. So I went to Pee Wee and I said, hey, man, is it true? He's like, yeah. I said, oh, that's cool. I said, I'll give my payday for that. He said, really? I said, yeah, absolutely. He's like, all right. He said, you for real? I said, I swear to God. He said, all right, done. He said, it'll be you. The next day we come in, it said Hulk Hogan versus Casey Thompson. And everyone was like, whoa, how'd you do that? And I was just playing back, just playing dumb. I don't know. And then, of course, how everything changes and changes at the last minute. It went to Hogan and Savage against Orndorf and Paul Roma. Pretty wonderful. So I had the day off. I'm like, all right, well, I had the day off. I'm still getting paid, so I'm trying to creep out of there. And as I'm going, I think I get caught by one of the agents, Terry Taylor or someone like that. He said, hey, where you going? I said, oh, well, nowhere. Why? And he's like, oh, we got you a match. I'm like, oh, okay. Who you got? He's like, oh, we got you against Vader. I'm like, oh, damn. So I went from having to wrestle Hogan to having off to wrestling Vader for like the 1,000th time. So I'm like, all right, 3 minutes. So we get in there and he has me in the corner. He's throwing those big haymakers where he's throwing live rounds at you. So I'm blocking up. I'm just up like this. I'm just blocking everything. And we get into the back. And at this point, I got to the point where if something happened, I would want to know, well, hey, what happened? What went wrong? You know, what can I do to do better or fix it, or what did you do, or whatever. And so we got into the back, and there was two guys in the back. It was by like the gorilla position. Dave Penzer was there, and a guy from another handsome guy, Nasty Ned Brady. He was in there. And he's like, hey, what happened? Why weren't you selling my punches? I was like, what do you mean selling your punches? You're throwing live rounds at me. And he's like, well, why didn't you go down? Or I'm like, go down? I said, you want me to go down on my ass where you can knee me in the face and break my nose? I said, you're just a piece of shit, bro. I said, why don't you learn how to work? Learn how to throw a punch. You're going there killing everyone. And he was like, and I was like, and everyone was like, whoa, he's about to get his ass kicked. And I was ready to just like haul ass out of there. And he's like, hey, I just put you over with Flair. I'm like, and I was so hot because I wrestled him so much. My head felt like it was a balloon from all those punches he was hitting me in the head with. And I just said, you just need to learn how to work. I said, this is a business, You're not supposed to be taking liberties on people out there. And he says, well, I put you over with Flair. And I'm like, I don't need you to put me over to anyone. I said, just learn how to work. And he just put his head down and walked away. And the other two guys were like, whoa. And fast forward 2 weeks is when he, messed with Orndorf. And I was in the other dressing room, so I didn't see the whole thing. But you could hear it all. And yeah, Orndorf wasn't the guy to mess with. You know, he he was just a badass all the way around. But yeah, how Haku stepped in, and I mean, that's another badass you don't want to mess with either. So I was there. I was in the same dressing room, and but smarted off the Paul, and Paul gave it to him.
Paul just wanted him to do his pre-tapes, and he'd asked him a couple of times, right, Casey?
Yeah, yeah. Asked him like 3 or 4 times, and he just tried to smart off and big shot him, and Paul wasn't having it no more.
And Paul was dressed out. He was in his wrestling gear, or he was in how was he dressed?
No, Paul was he was in his flip flops. Paul was in wore flip flops everywhere. He was like he wore the Florida stuff all the time. In a shirt with flip flops on
And
everywhere.
and both of his arms were working great, right? Like he didn't have atrophy in the one arm because of
No,
nerve
he
damage.
did already.
Oh, so wait a
Yeah.
minute. Paul Orndorf beats up Vader with one arm wearing flip flops.
Pretty much.
I tell you this, it killed Vader's mystique when he came into WWF, because that was like that's all anybody knew. And the big
killed his push.
mastodon. Yeah, killed his push, killed everything. And the fact that Paul Orndorf with one arm and in flip flops whipped his ass in a WCW locker room. Just nobody was intimidated by Vader at that point.
And it destroyed him mentally too. From the time I spent around him, you could tell this is something that never left his mind.
Yeah. It's when you build yourself up and you build your aura and your mystique as it had been since Japan, from his first match in New Japan where he goes over and is smashes Inoki and there's a riot in the building, and from there his great run to where he's taken a lot of damage and physically he's older and he's not the same anymore, but he's still Vader. He's still, the mastodon. And that wasn't happening anymore. Paul Orndorf said, "Get up. Let's do pre-tapes." Well, I'm going to come back and ask again. You better be ready to go. And he wasn't. So it was on.
Man, I don't know many people that liked him ever.
He was really nice to me, but I never wrestled him, as I said.
Well,
and he seemed very lonely at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can see that. In WCW, his attitude was probably different once everything happened and he went up to WWF. Plus, it was a different league up there. I mean, the work rate was probably better, and he wasn't to that standard even.
Right, and that was so he came in '95, and they kind of smashed him over. But then by summer of '96. Nobody wanted to work with him anymore. And the SummerSlam match with Shawn Michaels, which has been talked about so much, and Shawn wasn't interested in doing business with Vader either. So yeah, it just kind of it affects everything, and obviously it affected him mentally, and then he was out of the company probably maybe a year and a half later, a couple of years, but was always nice enough and got along with everybody in the locker room area as far as the production people.